I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. Young people today are worried about money, but do they know enough to manage it successfully? Increasing numbers of schools are requiring courses on financial literacy. Students, too, have expressed interest in these courses. What do students need to know to be financially literate? And why is it difficult for many of us to feel knowledgeable about money? Join us today on EdCast as we delve into the ABCs of financial literacy. Coming up now.
The top 10 teen money myths. Number 10.
I don't have to worry about credit yet.
Number 9.
Bad credit can't keep me from getting a job.
Number 8.
All loan companies are the same.
Number 7.
All credit cards are alike.
Number 6.
Advertisements always tell the truth.
Number 5.
It's okay to bounce a few checks.
Number 4.
It's okay to make minimum payments on a credit card.
Number 3.
Fine print isn't important.
Number 2.
Paying late occasionally can't hurt my credit.
And number 1.
Young people don't have credit scores.
Joining me today are Melody Maisonette and Sadiq Muhammad. Sadiq Muhammad is a Bronx native with degrees in business management and economics and human resource management. He has worked in higher education for the past decade, spending time in residence life, student development, orientation, learning communities, and advisement. Sadiq teaches courses on money management and finance. Melanie Maisonette is a financial well-being coach. She's passionate about teaching financial literacy to families and underserved communities. She's worked as a financial educator and a nonprofit and youth development and education in New York City. She believes that young people should be financially knowledgeable before entering the real world. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
As you can see, we began our show with a video that talked about some of the financial misconceptions that young people have about finances. And today we'll dive into what students really need to know about money and what they need to know to be successful in dealing with money. But let's just start with what is financial literacy? Sid, what do we mean by that?
So generally speaking, when we're talking about financial literacy, we're really just trying to help people understand that there is a need to understand your finances, right? Understand how to manage your money. We talk about different types of literacy regular, whether it's like math, English, reading, writing, right? But financial literacy is right up there with, I would say, one of the most important things you really need to understand for life, right? These are things that impact everyone. With financial literacy, that's another thing about it. Like, it's one of the few topics in life that every one of us has to manage, right? That we share.
And I will say, we mentioned the misconceptions that teens have or young people have. A lot of adults don't know enough about financial literacy either. So let's go to Melody then, and also say, why is it important to have financial literacy, Melody?
Well, like Sid said, it's very, very important, very vital, just to be able to manage life. Finances are going to play a part the moment you graduate high school, and probably even before then, right? You're old enough by the age of 16 to be able to work. You start learning the fundamentals like saving, opening a bank account. Mm-hmm. But once you get older, you now have to handle your credit score. You have to learn how to save money to pay rent. You have to worry about retirement. All these things follow us throughout life. So if you don't know how to manage it from the jump, you start making, not the greatest decisions, or you just are kind of going through life just by chance, and sometimes it gets too late where you don't have the time to save up for retirement.
Exactly.
What do you think this lack of education, the effect of it, has had on underserved communities?
Oh, it's a lot. There's so many different components of financial literacy, and I've seen it in my communities, even in my families, where people aren't prepared to save for retirement. They're just, the mindset is, I'm going to work until I can't. Mm-hmm. And if you're not prepared or even taught how to read certain documents like your 401k that your job provides, or what that entails, you don't necessarily give yourself the best chance. And if you're not learning it as a parent, it's kind of hard to teach that to your children. And we're not being taught that in school, so it's really unfortunate. But you see the gap where people are lacking that education and how it affects their lives.
I'm smiling because I sometimes throw those letters about my own 401b right into the garbage. So I'm feeling like maybe I should open them up and read them a little bit more carefully. Now let's go back to, there is a great push right now to teach financial literacy in schools, but it's not overall really being taught yet. Why isn't it, and at what age do you think financial literacy education should start?
If I really had to choose, I mean, I would say as early as possible.
Well, like how early? Like
okay,
that?
so my oldest daughter is 4, and we bought her like a little, register, a little piggy bank type thing. So she can, from now, kind of just started even getting the little concepts of money, right? Like when we're playing, she'll be like, it's $1 for the made up ice cream she just gave me. So just getting this understanding that money is behind a lot of what we do. Right, so I would say as early as possible. Realistically, though, I think high school would be a great time for them to really, even middle school. I've done sessions for middle school students where we're trying to teach them those basics, right? Budgeting, throwing credit out there. We're not getting into nuances, but I think planting the seed right at that time so they understand this is something you're going to need to develop over the next few years.
No. Do you think in general, Melanie, people don't like talking about money?
Not at all.
Okay, and why is that, do you think?
Well, if we're not taught to do it early on, it just becomes a stigma. It's something that we keep to ourselves. It's that mindset of just nobody needs to be in my business, especially if their finances aren't looking that great. You don't really want anyone to know that. You feel judged. But it's important to talk about it, just like anything else. If there's something wrong, you have to find the solutions, and we don't get that naturally. So you have to speak to a professional or even just your family to know what's going on and how we can set a game plan to fix it.
All right, so let's get down to some of the specifics here, right, about financial literacy and what you need to know, some of the core components, okay? So, Sid, what are the basic financial concepts that we want young people to know about?
I mean, we'll probably touch on these as we go on with this show, but I think budgeting really is where it all starts, right?
Okay.
It's probably the most basic financial literacy component I think people need to understand. Then followed pretty closely by credit, interest rates. I mean, the list definitely goes on, but we'll stick for the sake of this right now for budgeting, credit, and really just long-term planning for their financial goals.
So let's go to budgeting. Melanie, what does budgeting mean for who? And personal, what's budgeting mean for young people?
Budgeting is just really understanding where's your money going. Knowing if you have expenses, you have enough to pay those expenses, but if you have money to set aside, what are you doing with that money that you're setting aside? Do you have a goal to save, or are you just saving aimlessly? Do you have play money, that I like to call it? I like, we want to hang out with our friends, but set that aside, make sure that your expenses are taken care of, and then also preparing to save.
Okay, so now let's go to debt. In the video, there were a lot of attitudes about debt that you two might want to debunk. So let's look at credit cards. We're not going to talk that much today about student loans because that's a whole kind of big separate category in financial aid in and of itself. But let's see if we can cover some of these other basics. Now, I have noticed sometimes, Sid, at the college, there was a time when people were giving out credit cards to students or allowing them to sign up and get a credit card. Is it a good idea when you're a college student to take those credit cards? Is it a way to build credit, or is it a way to get in trouble?
So as with much of what we're talking about, I feel like nothing is really like black or white, right?
Okay,
a lot of it is in that gray area. So pros and cons to everything. I was one of those students here who got signed up for one of those credit cards when I was in high school, right?
Okay,
and
all right.
at the time, I had really no idea what it was and what I was doing with it. But years later, I'm looking back like I'm really happy I opened it back then, right? Because as we get into the nuances of financial literacy, you understand that the longer you've had this credit history is actually a good thing for you. Hopefully you were responsible in that time while you had it. Maybe some more education would help while we're handing out credit cards to, young adults, even adults. Not everyone really has the education around it. But I would say it could be used as a benefit when we get into the nuances. But early on, if there's no education going with it, of course, could be more of a setup for failure for some individuals.
Yeah,
I was that kid.
You were that
I was
kid
that
too.
kid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everyone who turns 18. It's, hey, now you have a credit card in the mail that you're pre-approved and you're doing the application.
Right.
You don't have anything going against you, so you're getting approved and you think it's free money if you're not being taught anything. So you're maxing it out and you're not being mindful of paying it back. So yeah, if there's no education prior to it, it's going to be detrimental, but you can always bounce back. So.
In terms of credit cards, I know we know as adults that not all credit cards are the same. But can we reasonably expect young people to really research a credit card and understand what's a good credit card and what isn't, and what should they be looking for to determine if a card is worth taking?
So I think it comes down to the goals, right? What are your goals? That's why goal setting really is so important in financial literacy, because it could be like, let's say this person really enjoys traveling. You know, maybe they want to take on a credit card that might be free, no annual fee, but waives international fees, right? Maybe they really love travel. They could get those air miles. Maybe they like cash back.
But you need to look for that.
But you have to look for it, right? And honestly, it's not the most complicated thing to find these, right? I don't think most people are going to be in the fine print, but they can definitely find summaries of cards and kind of see people who've had different experiences and being able to kind of choose from there.
Okay, now let's take a look at building and improving credit, all right? Because this is a very important concept. Okay, the opening video raised some questions about how young people feel about credit. And so at what age should we begin worrying about credit? The teen in the opening video said, I'm too young to worry about, credit. What age do we have to start worrying?
The moment you start getting those pre-approved cards in the mail is when you should start paying attention about establishing credit. That's automatic. If this is something that they're targeting you for a reason, and that should be, you should have your guard up.
And at what age do you begin to get a credit score?
I'm going to say, probably as early as technically you have a credit score. It's just that it's not really, no one uses it, right, at that age. Even when we go into identity theft, like, fun fact.
Fun facts, you guys.
This is a fun
Give
fact.
us a fun fact. Go ahead.
But, fraudsters actually prefer to steal children's identities because they know that those are clean records that they're going to be pulling. They don't actually want to take a chance on adults because they don't know if they're going to get a good credit report or maybe someone who might not have the best credit report.
Yeah.
So, and just continuing to find, from what we've seen, there's reports that show that people can buy a child's social for $2 on the black web. It's that easy.
Okay. So as early, you have that credit score or something built around you from a very early age. Now,
Yes.
So one of the young people in the video said, having a bad score is not really going to affect my getting a job. Melanie, is that true? If you have a bad credit score, might it affect you getting a job?
Sometimes it really depends on the job.
Okay.
But I know if they do a big background check, and say if you're in the financial industry and you're trying to apply, if they see that you're not great with your own personal finances, not going to technically trust you on helping anyone else's.
Would it affect you getting a student loan?
Credit scores, not necessarily. I think generally speaking, students will have access to different types of aid that they can receive, but it certainly impacts a variety of other types of loans, credit cards, interest rates, right? The direct correlation with your credit score to what you're going to pay for these loans and interest rates, that's a whole show probably on itself.
Okay. Now let's talk about not just young people, but adults.
Yeah.
What if you're late paying, once in a while, you overlooked a payment and that maybe happens a couple of times. How important is that?
Late payments. Late payments are very detrimental. The way I like to explain finance, the way I like to explain your credit score and debt with adults specifically, it's you're having a relationship with your creditor. You paying back on time all the time. That relationship, that pattern lets them know that they can trust you. Just like in a relationship, you're showing up, you're doing the things that you need to do. Your partner starts to trust you a little bit more. They start to open up a little bit more. You start doing the late payments and start being inconsistent, makes them want to back off and just, I don't think I want to give them a bigger loan. Or any other creditor that sees that, I don't think I want to get in a relationship with this person because they're inconsistent. So on-time payments is very, very detrimental.
And I suppose the converse of that is that on-time payments are very beneficial.
Yes.
If you want to build your credit score.
Absolutely.
That it's important that you do that.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a look at minimal payments. I thought, she looked at me before the show started, like, really, Linda? I thought making minimal payments was okay. And that if you made a minimal payment, they say minimal payment. So if you make a minimal payment, what could be bad about that?
So yes, Linda did try to stress me out before we got here with the statement. But when it comes to minimum payments, again, right, everything's in that gray area. There are specific situations where a minimum payment could be okay. Maybe you have a credit card that does not accrue interest for a year, for 15 months, and you're in a situation where you intentionally did that, right? And you wanted to make minimal payments to keep more cash on hand. But aside from these exceptions, generally speaking, what happens when you're making a minimum payment is that you're really just getting a lot more. The way I like to explain it to someone is, we know this bottle of Poland Spring costs $1. Would you pay $3 for it?
On the
Not in the
throughway, I
city,
might.
not in the city,
Okay,
you
the
know, here,
throughway.
right?
Yeah, no, not necessarily.
Right.
Not if I can
You
avoid
wouldn't.
it, right?
So when it comes to your credit card and interest bill, and when that's what I kind of tell my students and like anyone who's at our presentations, that that's what you're doing every day when you let interest build on your card. You're paying more for that $1 water bottle than you would have otherwise, right? And sometimes when it comes to making those minimum payments, depending on the size of your loan and the interest rate, you find that the balance of your loan can increase every month, even though you're making minimum payments, because so much interest is building on your loan that your minimum payment could be doing nothing for you actually trying to get rid of this loan.
And I'm going to assume that the student who said that if I bounce a couple of checks, it doesn't make a difference, that bouncing checks is a bad idea. Not that anyone uses checks anymore, but so just to sort of sum it up for the two of you, what would be the best way in terms of financial literacy to tell young people who are watching this how to build a good credit score? What should they be doing first and foremost, Melanie?
Well, if you're going to use a credit card, make sure that you have the money to back it up. This
Okay.
is something that you have to pay back. So one of the things that I teach my clients is use your credit cards for emergencies, for the smaller one-time payments, for things that you know that you can pay off pretty quickly. And rule of thumb, have at least just 30% of, your credit utilization. So,
Okay.
Interest doesn't kind of take over of everything else.
So do you have anything to add to that, just to give advice for building good credit?
For sure. I would say my golden rule that I usually tell, especially students, is that they should think of their credit card as a debit card, right? Because when people are using a debit card, I think they usually think much more about it than when they're swiping
Sure,
a credit
because
card.
you can only use what you have on it.
Exactly. So really think of your credit card as a debit card. It's not extra money for you to go and spend. You're spending your own money. It's just that Visa's paying for it first, and then you're paying back after. Right?
Now, the one thing I know from personal experience is that when you're young, there are two things you don't think about. One of them is retirement. You think that's never going to happen. So when you hear about retirement plans, you just sort of zone out.
Yeah.
And the other, I think, is long-term investments. And part of financial literacy seems to be thinking about your future and long-term investments. What can we expect of students in terms of thinking about long-term investments, especially when a lot of our students feel they don't have money to get through tomorrow? So what is it that you would like them to think about in terms of long-term investments?
For long-term investments, the way I think about it and the way I teach my clients is the earlier you start, the longer you have to save up, and the more that you'll end up with. If I try to save up for retirement and I want to retire at 65 and I start at 50, I only have 15 years. But if I start at 25, I have 40 years. So it's just being mindful. The more time you give yourself, the better prepared you are.
Is there anything?
I would add that it's a mentality, right? Because I think a lot of us, especially when I'm working with students, they're just in this zone where it's like, I'm just going to go to school to get this degree, finish this degree, get this job, work for the rest of my life. They don't even stop to think, like, at some point, you're not going to be able to physically work for your money, right? You need to have
Right.
some type of system set up where, whether it's health, whether it's age, whatever it might be, once we get to that point, life, there's some system in place to help you, right?
Making long-term investments, of course, the kinds of things that you invest in for the long term, like maybe a stock fund or CDs, really does require a different level, I think, of financial literacy. Yes, I mean, you need to really be savvier. And I know that one of the things they said in the video was about, well, it's not important to read the fine print. Now, of course, we know that it is. But I'm here to say that, is it even possible for anybody to read all the fine print on anything? I mean, when I open up the fine print on a credit card change, let's say, it's pages and pages of what is even to me kind of incomprehensible. So what's the minimal thing we want to tell our students about fine print?
You just got to read it, to be honest.
You have to read it?
We're in a time that we want everything very quick. And if it's not on the first page and it's not in bold, we don't want to read it. We're just
No,
like,
that's
okay,
right.
we believe what the person told us. I don't have to read it. It's just big jargon and we don't have to understand it. It's definitely there for a reason. I don't think anyone's typing all of that for no purpose.
But
we're
isn't
not.
it there to protect the financial institution rather than you?
But you want to know that. You want to know
Okay.
that you're not being protected.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough, because it is there to not so much to protect you. So I wanted to go back to one thing, using that credit card. Is it okay to, let's say, make a big purchase? You need a computer, let's say, and the only way you can afford that is with a credit card? So to pay that down, would that be okay?
So again, all depends on circumstances, unfortunately, right? I think it's totally appropriate to put it on a credit card. Again, maybe you got a credit card that has no interest rate for a year. So that might give you time to put this large purchase on there and not pay it off in a monthly like repayment plan that works for your budget, right? Generally speaking, though, I would tell people don't put something on your card that you don't have the money to pay for. But again, you might find yourself in those situations like what you just mentioned, and you could plan appropriately for that, right? Just be mindful that if you're going to put it on a credit card and you can't pay it off, what impact does that interest building on it have on you over?
Okay. Believe it or not, we're almost running out of time. So I want to ask you, I know,
Okay.
right? I want to ask you a couple of things. One is, first of all, at what point do you know that you need professional advice? At what point should a student or anybody say, I need to talk to a professional?
The moment you feel like you don't know the answer to it, you should be asking someone who does.
And how do you find sound professional advice, unbiased professional advice?
That's hard sometimes because there's
Okay.
so
Right.
many different
Right.
people
So what
and
should you look out
entities.
for in terms of getting financial advice?
Well, you should definitely check somebody's credentials, how long they've been doing it. Are they even touching the topics that you even have questions about? We have so many different financial people, right? We have financial coaches, financial advisors, financial planners. What are these people? What are they talking about? And do I feel comfortable? Sometimes I know for underserved communities, they don't necessarily want to talk to somebody who doesn't speak their language. So you want to make sure that you can relate to the person as well. It's a lot easier to kind of bring your guard down because a lot of people speak about talking about their money like taking their clothes off.
And do you also have to be wary, I know that I am, about people who are selling you products?
100%.
So they're selling you something, or a life insurance, or they're selling you a financial product. You have to think about, is the advice you're being given unbiased, or somebody trying to make a sale on you? Is that something that you would alert students to, or that you think about yourself?
For sure. Like that's something I would add on is just that, you want to be mindful of the narrative that the people you're talking to, they're kind of
Absolutely.
throwing in front of you, right? Because a lot of times, depending on who you're working with, an institution, they will send products that are more beneficial to them, right? Than maybe what might just be a general product that might be
Right.
good for your use. But in today's day and age, there's so much access to like social media, just content, YouTube, all the different social media sites where you can just do your research and learn a lot, get like some basic understanding before you go speak to somebody, and then it might help inform your decisions, right?
I think also, I mean, we're both Bronx natives. We know when something's kind of up. Our antennas
Right.
start going up. You can sense when somebody's just trying to sell you something and they're not listening to you versus them explaining something to you and also even giving you a story, their why of why they even share this information with you.
Well, you
So-
too are not just Bronx natives. You're savvy because you do this kind of work. And I don't want our students totally relying on their gut instincts, because I think, as you said, you need to research the person and what they're doing and what they're selling. We only have a minute left. I will give you one of the criticisms about teaching financial literacy is that you really can't do it in the extent that most of the policies and laws that are out there are really against the consumer. So how can anybody really make a good financial decision anyway? I mean, have you tried to buy a car or lease a car? What do you say to that? Is it worth it to do financial literacy education, knowing that the odds, in a sense, are stacked against us? And what can we do about that?
Well, I would say that's exactly why you need financial literacy, because the
Exactly.
odds are stacked against you, right? So anything you can do to gain that knowledge and help you kind of navigate that path, find your way, is going to help you in the long run. You're not going to always win. You might take some losses along the way, but to that point, it's all the losses I took as what's helped me get to this point today, to now want to
Absolutely.
educate others on this, right? So my peers, my community, my people don't have to go through the exact same thing
Great.
that I did.
Melanie,
Absolutely.
final word before we say goodbye?
Basically, do you want to go to war without weapons and a shield, or do you want to get prepared
Good
and
point.
be armored up?
I thank you both so much. I hope that our viewers have learned something, both young people and adults, about financial literacy education. Thank you so much, Melanie Maisonette and Sadiq Mohammed. Don't go away. We'll be right back with our Ed Bites. Welcome back to this edition of Ed Bites. The Jewish Family and Children's Services Holocaust Center reports an alarming finding. 50% of young adults are unsure if the Holocaust is a lie. According to a poll conducted by The Economist YouGov, only half of young adults aged 18 to 29 disagreed with the statement, the Holocaust is a myth. With rising anti-Semitism, this underscores the need for more Holocaust education. Education Week reports that according to polling data from the Black Education Research Center at Teachers College, Columbia University, a majority of voters want K-12 public schools to teach the history and legacy of racism and slavery. Results from a representative phone poll of 1,000 registered voters found that 85% of respondents agreed that public school students should learn about the history of racism and slavery in the United States and its reverberations today. Who likes math? According to a study undertaken by Youth Truth, a nonprofit that surveys K-12 students and their families, 70% of respondents said they can be good at math if they try hard, but they tend to bail when the work gets difficult. Many found math boring and not related to the real world. Attitudes about math reflected demographics and parent education levels. Teacher-student relationships also seem key to students' attitudes about math. Cursive writing, or script, is making a comeback. More states are requiring that schools teach it. A large body of research supports its use. Benefits include building fine motor skills and sparking collaborations between different parts of the brain involved in thinking, language, and working memory. For example, students who take notes by hand rather than digitally retain more information. Reintroducing cursive instruction into an already packed curriculum has drawn debate on both sides. That's it for this edition of EdCast. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your thoughts and comments to cunyedcast@gmail.com.